Hey there, deep divers. It's Julie B, and today I'm diving into episode 2 of The Institute titled Shots for Dots. The mystery deepens as this shadowy organization sends one of the kids to the back half. Luke undergoes his first tests with injections, and Tim continues on the path that I think will lead him to investigate the Institute. Ms. Sigsbee throws a party every time a kid graduates to the back half, and in this episode it's Iris, who looks terrified and teary-eyed. She's presented with what looks like a birthday cake, except it says almost home, and the number of candles represents the number of days that she's been in the front half. The remaining kids console Iris, then look on as if in mourning as the staffer Maureen leads her out of the room. She looks as if she's being marched to her own execution. Nikki morbidly says, "We will see her no more." This is actually a common expression used in obituaries and eulogies to express the finality of death and the end of a physical presence. However, I don't think that this is a clue that the kids are actually being killed in the back half. It might be what Nikki's thinking, but I have a different theory about what's going on there. In my first deep dive, I pointed out this shot from the opening title sequence that shows someone wheeling a person in a bed into a room full of others in beds. It's the closing shot of the sequence, and the title of the show appears over it. I don't think that's a coincidence. Rather, I think this is a clue as to what's going on in the back half. Perhaps the kids are brought there to be placed into induced comas for further experimentation, brainwashing, and/or a period of waiting until they can be utilized later by the Institute for nefarious purposes. The kids are brought there when their psychic abilities begin to strengthen to a certain level. At that point, they could become too powerful for the administrators to keep them under control and imprisoned there in a passive way, so they have to be placed into this coma state at that point until they can be used in a controlled manner. Just a theory of mine. Keep in mind, I haven't read the book the series is based upon. Later in the episode, Ms. Sigsbee and Mr. Stackhouse speak to a mystery man by phone, whose face is intentionally obscured from the camera. They discuss the assassination of the Snatch team leader Michelle by the reporter Kate on their orders. They had realized that she was unreliable in terms of keeping their dark secrets, so they need better vetting procedures for their staff. Sigsbee says that what she requires is actually more kids, and the man agrees that with all the new keyholes coming up, they do need more kids, so he needs their Snatch teams to be at full strength. He wants them to fill Michelle's vacancy with someone from their in-house staff, which Sigsbee objects to because they're undermanned as it is. But he threatens to tell the committee in charge that she's unable to handle the amount of targets she's been assigned, so she acquiesces and suggests that they place the reporter Kate in the position temporarily, to which the man and Mr. Stackhouse agree. We also learn in this conversation that they've beefed up passive surveillance of their staff like Michelle recently, and then active measures were authorized, meaning her assassination by Kate. So this organization is surveilling its staff, and if they deem them unworthy, they have no qualms about cold-blooded murder. Furthermore, Ms. Sigsbee says that Snatch team leaders like Michelle only have access to the front half side of their mission. In other words, they're not informed about the mission of the back half side of things, the part of the Institute that's the most secretive. Whatever they're doing there is even more top secret than the abduction, experimentation, and torture of children, which is really unthinkable. As the conversation takes place, we see the mystery man clutching a black rosary in several shots, so perhaps there's some religious zealotry component to the Institute. And there's this biblical painting on the wall, Daniel in the Lion's Den, which is known for its symbolism of faith, resilience in the face of adversity, and miraculous salvation from danger. So why is this here and highlighted for us to see? It could be a clue that the people running the Institute really are saving the world using these kids, and the world itself is in this kind of danger. Either that or the painting is here because the people in charge think they're saving the world, but they're delusional. Also, there are 2 pictures of interest that are featured on his desk, one in which he's shaking President Ronald Reagan's hand, and in the other he appears to be shaking hands with a young George W. Bush. So clearly, the Institute has ties to the highest levels of the U.S. government. That doesn't mean it's a government entity, though. It could be a shadowy organization that works in concert with the government, or with rogue officials within the government, or a black op. After the call, Sigsbee takes issue with Stackhouse having questioned her security clearance status during the call, accusing him of throwing her under a bus. But Stackhouse responds that he knows she wouldn't compromise this place, because she's aware that if any of this ever comes out, she'd be just as screwed as the rest of them. Thus, they're acutely aware of the gravity of the crimes they're committing with these kids. Elsewhere, Tony escorts Luke to his first day of testing with Dr. Hendricks, where Luke explains that he can't do telekinesis on demand, only when something activates it. And based on episode 1, it seems like strong emotion is one thing that can accomplish that, when he made a pizza platter levitate while speaking about a yearning to learn about the unknown. Luke confronts Dr. Hendricks about the Hippocratic oath to first do no harm, in light of the fact that he's experimenting on abducted children here. But Hendricks insists that the work he's doing is moral because he believes that the ends justify the means. He believes he's saving the world. I get the sense that he's not privy to the true mission of the Institute. For one thing, he wasn't included in the phone call between Sigsbee, Stackhouse, and the Mystery Man. But again, it's possible that the Institute really is saving the world and using the kids in a trolley problem scenario. The ends justify the means. Tony forces Luke to take an injection of a mystery liquid, refusing to tell him what it is and continuing to act like a creep. Hendricks reminds Luke that it's important to tell them when he sees the dots, but it's unlikely that it'll happen today, he says, and it's still unclear what the dots mean. Luke experiences double vision and ringing ears as the chemicals they injected take effect. Feeling so sick, he tries as hard as he can, but he can't see the dots or activate his telekinesis, even after a second shot from Tony. Hendricks warns Luke to let them know immediately when they see the dots for his own safety and to keep his teeth clenched so he doesn't bite off his own tongue. So clearly these experiments are dangerous for the kids. Then Luke is finally able to make a metal tray levitate and fall, perhaps because of the strong fear that Hendricks may have instilled in him with his words. Then he throws up. When Luke meets up with Nikki afterward, Nikki tells him that he had a similar nauseous reaction to his first shots for dots, but probably nothing compared to what George just went through. Then Iris leads George in, who's dizzy after just completing his final front half test, the dream box, that he's heard it dredges up bad shit from your... Nikki says that he's heard it dredges up bad shit from your subconscious, like your own personal horror movie, and the only way to make it stop is by lining up the lights and showing them you're ready for back half. So clearly the staff are using the kids' personal traumas to trigger their psychic powers. Then, in an odd scene, Sigsbee and Hendricks meet up in a storage room full of toys and apparently prepare to have sex. Sigsbee doesn't even want to look at Hendricks, as if he disgusts her. So why would she want to do this with him? Perhaps they aren't allowed to fraternize with people from the outside world, due to the top-secret nature of their work. Later, Luke and Nikki go over where the security cameras are located, and Luke determines that they can't knock them all out unless they recruit an inside man. Luke points out that all organizations have a weak link, secret resentments, secret lives, and that's how you recruit spies from such places, to work against them. He uses the acronym MICE: money, ideology, coercion, and ego. These are ways to manipulate people into becoming spies. But the problem is they only get one shot, and if they pick the wrong person and get turned down, that person will report it to their superiors. They also don't have much time. The average front half stay of any kid is about 15 days, so they need an extremely powerful TP kid to see inside the minds of the staff and determine who would make a good mole and spy for them. Luke notices smoke emanating from a smokestack in the back half building and asks what it is, but Nikki doesn't know. He says it happens every week or so. It looks like crematorium smoke, pretty ominous, but that could be a red herring, and it doesn't mean they're killing the kids in the back half. If it happens every week, that would be an awful lot of kids. I doubt they move a new kid there every week, unless they're killing kids who are already there, ones who are deemed failed guinea pigs. Incidentally, the fact that the front half stays are so short is another clue to me that they aren't bringing the kids to the back half just to kill them. It doesn't make sense to me that they'd spend time developing the psychic ability of these kids for such a short period and then just kill them, when their abilities could be harnessed and exploited more later. Back at the Denison police station, Tim tells Wendy that he has experience dealing with mental illness because his mom was mentally ill like Annie. He says that his mom's delusions might have seemed crazy, but I usually found there was some grain of truth to them. And I believe this is a clue that Annie is actually onto something about the Institute, that there are grains of truth in her delusions, and we should try to parse through her words to find them. But Wendy doesn't think that Annie's right about Zoe Sloane's death not being accidental. She knew Zoe in high school and said Zoe and some friends were swimming in an area with a dangerous current at night, possibly drunk. Then 4 days later, their bodies washed up dead. However, this doesn't mean that they actually drowned. It's possible that their deaths were faked and made to look like an accident without any eyewitnesses. Perhaps they found out something about the Institute and they were taken out as a result. The whole town has theories about what goes on there, and kids can be nosy after all. Tim notes that Annie somehow knew the nickname his mother called him, and Wendy acknowledges that Annie says mind-bending shit from time to time, that she's tuned into some weird frequencies. Indeed, I think Annie is telepathic, and maybe Wendy at least believes that to some extent. Later, Tim goes to visit Annie, and she says that one of her sisters used to play the concertina, but her sister wouldn't have been able to tell him about that institute, what they really do up there. And I believe she really does know a bit about what's going on, perhaps because she could have been a patient there once, and they didn't erase her memory properly. But however she learned about it, I think this comment will be partly responsible for sending Tim on a path toward investigating the Institute. In the Institute eating area, after going in the dream box, George shows Luke that his powers of telekinesis have improved to the point where he can pull coins out of the vending machine and get them snacks. But the dream box also made him sick and forgetful about what happened in there. Nikki tells Shaw not to drink the Kool-Aid, that anything anyone tells them in this place is a lie, and I think he's right about that. But Shaw thinks that Maureen must be on their side because she tells them about all the spots where the cameras can't hear them. Still, Nikki maintains that they can only trust each other, the kids. In an intriguing development, Stackhouse approaches Dr. Hendricks about developing the kids' precognition, which they aren't supposed to be doing anymore, according to Sigsbee in episode 1. Hendricks tells Stackhouse that Luke has pretty low TP scores, but they'll get those up, and it's just because his BDNF levels are low. BDNF is a protein that plays a crucial role in brain health, particularly in learning, memory, and neuronal survival. It acts as a neurotrophin, supporting the growth and differentiation of neurons and promoting synaptic plasticity. So, low levels of BDNF would probably hamper the ability of the Institute to develop the kids' brains' psychic abilities. Therefore, they're working to raise those BDNF levels. But according to Stackhouse, even a moderate BDNF score combined with Luke's superior IQ could make him uniquely valuable. Hendricks says that his job, like everyone else's mission there, is to invigorate his TP. However, Stackhouse points out that sometimes there's an infinitely higher value in harnessing the kid's PC, as in precognition. Hendricks gets nervous about the cameras hearing them discuss this, but Stackhouse reassures him that the cameras are not operational at the moment, and he's head of security, so he can make that happen. But Hendricks still protests that he's not using his position to scan for PCs because that's out of their mission purview now, and there are other facilities so tasked. In other words, they're no longer developing precognition in the kids, but other facilities are still working on that. Stackhouse replies that's utter bullshit. So is he suggesting that their superiors are lying to them about other facilities taking care of scanning for PCs? That would be my guess. As they walk outside along the Institute grounds, they continue this discussion. Stackhouse says that Sigsbee's only directive is to keep the conveyor belt moving and stay ahead of the keyholes, but he knows that Hendricks shares his perspective that they should consider the incalculable value of identifying the kids' genuine PC potential. It's still unclear what the keyhole analogy means, but Sigsbee has been ordered to keep the flow of kids moving into the front half and then the back half, like a conveyor belt, to develop and utilize their psychic powers for some likely nefarious purpose, which they speak about in code as, quote, staying ahead of the keyholes, unquote. Hendricks admits that he agrees with Stackhouse, but the Institute group, which must be the committee running it, does not agree. Stackhouse tells him that there are multiple third parties who are willing to funnel astronomical sums of money to whomever can provide them with a competitive advantage. ostensibly to develop and harness the kid's precognition potential. So Stackhouse tells Hendricks to continue trying to find a kid with PC potential and develop it, and he'll take care of finding themselves a buyer. So whether the Institute is a shadowy government operation or not, clearly there are private entities that want to hijack it and procure the kids to use for their own profit or benefit. He warns Hendricks not to tell Sigsbee, who sees them from her window nearby. So she seems to live on the premises of the Institute. Maybe they all do, due to the secretive nature of their work. We also see Sigsbee talk to her elderly father on the phone and lie to him about being a third-grade teacher, isolated from even her loved ones by her secretive job. Back at the scene between Tim and Annie, they're interrupted by gunfire at a nearby convenience store where Tim chases the gunmen off and calls for backup, then tends to the wound of the owner inside, Mr. Dobira. When Officer Drew enters the scene, he panics, while Tim goes into full cop mode and proves that he can handle himself extremely well in a crisis, taking charge and giving Drew instructions on what to do, because he's clearly incompetent. Maybe he's even an Institute plant who's just there to maintain a cover-up, and since Denison is such a small town, he can get by despite being unfit to be a cop. Still, Tim is generous later and doesn't take credit for anything, telling the police chief that Drew did much better than what actually happened in reality. Closing out the episode, we see there's a new arrival at the Institute, a much younger boy named Avery, who the kids find crying in his pajamas in the hallway. Shaw gets a read on him right away with her TP and senses that his psychic powers are strong. She's never felt any this strong. Satisfied, Luke thinks they might have found a kid who can actually help them get into the head of a staff member who can be their spy, their inside person, and start their rebellion against their overlords here. So that was my breakdown of the Institute Episode 2. It looks like the kids have a viable plan of rebellion that will pay off with the arrival of Avery, and Tim has shown he has what it takes to be a hero and stay cool in a crisis. So he'll be a huge asset to the kids as well once he starts to investigate the Institute. And Tim's instincts are exactly right. Annie may have delusions, but there's always a kernel of truth in them. Now, as always, let me know your thoughts and theories down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. And until next time, keep on deep diving and let's see what we can uncover together.